Call the meeting to order at 10:05 a.m. Do roll call. Carrie Stuckey. Myself, Jana Warner. Ronnie Wright is absent. Eric.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
And Kate Rose. And Jim Wiesner.
Here.
Right.
So Kate Rose will be, since Ronnie is not here, she can fill in for that as she's the alternate.
Perfect. All right, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So
And
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. And then we need to do the approval of the minutes from the May meeting. Did you guys all have a chance to take a look at those?
Tom made one note in there for the minutes about the covered pickleball courts. I don't think the board said that we wanted to have those. It'd be nice to have the option to have that rather than that was being a request for those. So I think that's the only change that we saw that needed to be made on the minutes. Other than that, I think it's just if there's a cost issue there and difference. So we just want to make sure that that's noted in the recommendation.
Right, so,
That having the option to cover the pickleball courts, but not necessarily a sort of requiring that in our recommendation.
all right, so Mikhail, you can make that change to the minutes. So can I get a motion to approve
Other than that, yeah,
pending that change?
pending that change, I move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the meeting at this time for public comment. Do we have any members of the public? Okay, so we can go ahead and move past that, get on to our action items. So first up is the Gate of Inspiration placement.
And we have JR, who's the chair of the Arts Commission here, and let's kind of turn the time over to him and talk a little bit about the art piece and some of their thoughts on placement.
Sure. J.R. Russell, Chairman of the Arts Commission. Ta-da! We've got two pieces left on the Kinnebrew. One of them is the totems, your towers, and they're gonna go out where the new rental site that's going up on 20, whatever that,
The U-Haul.
yeah, U-Haul place, and then there's a,
They're proposed to go there. Nobody
Yeah,
knows
okay.
it yet.
that's where the plan is.
Okay.
And there's 3 totem poles and they're all rusted. So they actually look good. And that's, right now, that's the proposed spot to put them out there. You'll see there's a bunch of trees right as you come up. The other one is the Gate of Inspiration. And it's a pretty cool piece. Originally, we were gonna move this one. And we're gonna put it to the entry to the marsh. We're gonna propose this. If you're coming out of Oak Harbor and you go up 20 Swantown, and there's that corner right there that, you see a lot of, signs for, hey, do this and that. And then there's a walkway. You'll see some steps going down. There's a walkway, and this will go down to the marsh. And the Gate of Inspiration is actually a pretty tall piece, but it actually has a window on it. Gate, window of inspiration. And our thought right now is to put it there and either try to pick some sort of a cool day, because we could point it so that the window, you're like, okay, it is June 12th is Inspiration Day, and that's where the sun comes up every June 12th. So it'd be like a little eclipse point. And so that's the proposal on that right now.
Would it be possible to have you send us pictures of the pieces? Just so you know?
Yeah, if they really want, I could pass my iPhone around and you guys can look at the video of it. But yeah, we can do that.
We don't need to make any decision on the
Oh,
placement right now.
Do you want to talk a little more and show them a map and have a discussion? Would you like it?
I don't have a map unless you have a map.
I could throw one up here. Yeah.
Are we looking at on which side of the trail? So if we're facing the trail looking sort of east, are we looking to the right side or the left side of where that trail entrance is? I'm just trying to vision it in my head.
Yeah,
I use the trail all the time.
Okay, if you were coming in Oak Harbor and you're
Yeah.
driving, you're like, well, look at that. There's some steps.
Yeah.
But we have to go up higher.
Oh, which way are you talking about?
Are you talking about the gate?
About the trail.
Yeah.
Scenic
He's
heights.
talking
So
about
you
yeah,
want it-
scenic heights. No, on 20, right? Oh, you're talking all the way up at 20?
Yeah,
Yep.
20
That's
is
at the
Swantown.
Centennial
19
Grove.
court, you're talking.
Oh,
19
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
There's like a big empty lot there.
Yeah.
Somebody has a for sale sign.
Somebody's trying to sell
Yeah.
that
Whose
piece.
car is that in front of my
I
house?
don't even know what that was.
Echo Alpha.
Yeah.
Well, now we're looking at
I don't know what it's on both.
the totem poles.
Right, where do you want to go?
Okay,
Highway 20 in Swantown.
So you want to put the totem poles in.
Okay, back where you
Right
were,
in.
Brian.
yeah.
You just were, needed to be a little further west than you originally were.
Nah.
Yeah. it works
It's
better
there,
with the
it's there,
maps.
it's there. There.
JR's traveling this
It's
morning.
there.
He's been
There.
all.
It works
all over
better
the
with the
city.
mouse.
Jared, you got a membership for this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, leave it there. Yeah. This walking trail?
Yeah.
Right there. This is the walking trail you're talking about?
Yes. So I don't know if it's there or there, we'll look at whereabouts to put it, but the piece stands and it's got a window on it.
How much of that is ours, Blaine? Is that all ours through there with?
Well, with the walkway's ours, and then we have a storm drain going through. I don't know how the right of way is
I think
on.
you have a 15-foot going through there as well.
Yeah, okay, because we have the storm drain going through. It looks narrow on it. And it's going to be developed someday. And actually, if this property gets developed, we may move the walkway. That would be but you know, one of those things, I mean, it could be happen in a year from now, it could happen. But we had talked about with the option of these are owned by the same property owner, so we've given the option of moving the storm drain and the walkway to align better with Swantown. So that would be the option. That would be the difficulty I would see, and you just don't have a lot of room. So,
I guess the concern I would have is, accessibility, right? I mean, art's there to be beholden, right? And I don't know that it's a great beholden spot to be driving by at, 30 miles an hour, and that's all you get to see. There's really not a place to park there or get out or anything, I guess would be my concern. And the same thing with the other spot, right? I mean, did we decide we were going to put any parking in up at Centennial Grove?
no, that's why I made sure he said proposed, that we haven't figured out. We're letting the developer come in and put it in the road right now.
I mean, I'd certainly like to hear the Arts Commission's thought on that, right? As to whether or not they feel as though these things should have an approach and an ability for people to actually walk up to them, take a picture standing beside them, et cetera, or are these really pieces of art that you just want people going by at 30 miles an hour? There it is, because
That, the piece that would go there is actually kind of leading down into the marshland, and it kind of is like, okay, this is where you could look at the future development for an art walk, sculpture park. And so,
Because isn't the trailhead right there?
Yes.
The parking lot?
Yeah.
down below.
Down below here, the city owns a lot here. We've already put in the towel is over on here. There's an art piece here already.
My concern is there's just no place off the highway at all to park. And if somebody did attempt to park there to get out and look at it or take a picture, it would be a pretty
Except
loud
between the
spot.
hours of 3:30 and 5:30, that's a parking lot right
Yeah,
there.
right, there you go.
That's-
The spot where we have the gravel pile on the Fred Marsh Trail. That's got really good access to it.
Well, again, I'm open to anything. I'm just thinking out loud, kind of, right? That not having a way for anybody to approach the art, just,
You come to the Y in the trail, either pops out at the bank or goes on around. So we got a pile of gravel sitting there right now, but that's a nice wide spot and it's all ours and.
Conceptually, though, I mean, to, I think, encapsulate what JR's talking about for the piece, it needs to be elevated in such a way that it actually, I think, has that window look. I mean, this is the essence of what that art's supposed to be, is looking through, peering through this gateway to look at something. That's why the hill, I think, is an attractive site, because it does allow for sort of that expansive view. If we're going to move it down, then pedestal base to raise the thing up, because if we're going to put it lower on that, we're not going to have the same sort of sense of the art that
We
we're
did
looking
that
for.
at Fort Nugent with the The acorn or the nut.
Yeah.
Seed,
Yeah, whatever that thing is.
yeah, the seed, it's supposed to be a seed that's
Oh, is that what that is?
sprouted.
Okay. Yeah, so some way to, I think, put it on a pedestal, if we're gonna capture the same thing, because moving art for the sake of it, but then losing the essence of the art piece is not a good idea. I mean, I have my concerns about that spot too, not because conceptually it's a bad idea, but just because of access and things. That said, it gets a lot of traffic through there, but being able to have more people access it. Are they gonna walk up that hill if they park down here and walk all the way up there? I would suggest what we know about people's activity levels, that hill might be intimidating.
Do you have a suggestion for alternate sites that would be a recommendation on?
Right now, it's proposed, so originally it was gonna go down where the angel is. I was like, okay, you ain't going there anymore, so we thought, looking at that marshland and future sculpture park type things, and the fact that it is a gate, and it'd be nice to look, you know, if we're looking through, if you put it at the top, then you've almost like completed the whole loop of the Kinnebrew collection. If you were coming in, you're driving in, ooh, Gate of Inspiration. You go by, then you go by the Boys Club, Girls Club, there's the other one. There's the other one. I don't know what it is. It's pretty. And then as you drive out of town, there's the totem poles. Oh, those are pretty. And you see them. So is that good enough for, do you have to physically go up and touch the piece? I don't know. But we can certainly take a look at this and we'll walk the area to see if there's a better spot or, you know, another cool looking spot. I personally fell in love with the window facing east for a sunrise of some sort.
I mean, I like the idea. I think I expressed this to you, Brian, in private, the idea of a sculpture kind of walk down there on the Friend Marsh and accessing, you know, creating some more trails down there for that. I also think that area that the city has owned at the end of Pioneer now, where those derelict buildings are, that we considering what to do there, might be another spot where you would get a clear look east. It would fit in with the downtown theme of some of the sculptures, but we'd be able to have a clear view looking over the seaplane base, looking out to the mountains, also being able to capture that sunrise, and depending where it's positioned on that property, there is some elevation there. As long as it's further away from that firefighter park is with the flagpole and stuff, so you have a clear unobstructed view. I mean, there's a nature and historical thing with the seaplane base in there, you know, the dome, then we've got the mountains in the distance, we've got the bay. It's a possibility. It doesn't necessarily fit what JR is talking about as far as entering in from that side and then closing out on the other side of town, but it could be a feasible site. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn because JR's put way more work in this than I am. I'm just shooting.
We'll walk the area and we'll keep looking. We'll look around. It's not like it's on a truck and it's being, you know, waiting to get planted tomorrow. So we can certainly go back and now that taking in what your guys' feelings and thoughts are, okay.
Have we got any numbers on what they're gonna take to install, what they're gonna require for concrete or base on that? 'Cause we should probably be doing that at the same time.
Probably the smarter people know that. I'm not the smart person.
Because we're looking for smart.
No, you're not, you're looking in the wrong spot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We should
Sally,
probably ask that
I think I
question.
have some preliminary installation costs from Gideon.
Do you?
Yeah, because Gideon's our expert on that.
And Cynthia Mason has joined us online. She's the vice chair of the Arts Commission, and she just Did a chat about if you wanted to walk with Arts Commission members. Councilmember Marshall was supportive of the Marsh Walk becoming an art walk with the rotating artwork. And 2 of the Arts Commission members are going to be walking it next week.
Can you just, Cynthia, can you send Mikhail the date and time of when they're gonna be walking it so she can get that out to us?
Just as long as we don't have a quorum, otherwise I have to issue a notice of attendance, so.
She's muted.
She's communicating by chat. She said, you bet.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, JR, for being
Okay.
here. We can go ahead and move on to the Pioneer Park discussion.
Put that on the agenda.
I'm gonna put that on the agenda. If we don't have anything for that right now, then we
It
can
was
go
on the
move
list,
past
I'm
it.
sorry.
Yeah.
All right, and you want to go back to the pickleball courts, have an update on that?
Yeah, so we had a RCE grant proposal for 250,000 for the pickleball courts. That along with our center parking lot were dismissed. County wanted to hear presentations on the marina grant. It's a $2.3 million grant for dredging and also for building improvements of Mariners Haven. So we'll be doing that next week with the county. So that kicks us back into looking at funding for pickleball courts again. We had a meeting with Brian Hunt with the school district, and the school district doesn't have any desire to really kick in anything or do any improvements around the Rotary Park or any other location right now. They have some budget concerns with overstaffing in certain areas that they're working through. So he is right now he's going, whatever you guys want to do, take it back to your park board, and we'll support you how we can, but right now we're not looking at keeping any funding. We don't really have any interest in pickleball courts. So they're good with releasing the MOU around those. We still have the 50,000 REIT funding, and we do have pockets of funding here and there at different locations that are tied to different locations. Nothing specifically that was called out as far as sports courts, but we have quite a bit around like sports fields and different things like that. So we'll look at different opportunities there, see if maybe there's some partners. We meet with like the pickleball people and see what they want to do. If they want to give the service group like a Rotary Club, possibly have discussions with the rec district, see if anyone else is interested in partnering on a project. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and keep going forward looking at grant funding. So really all I want from you guys for today is just some discussion about locations and what you would like as far as scope. I've been talking with Brad Tuninga with Skagit Valley College, and they built those courts up there. I think about like $1.3 million, and they had a major funder donor that helped do that, but they're happy to do like a site visit. I might grab a couple of you guys to go and do a little field trip. Just look at, and they're great courts, they're covered courts. It's like a 10-court facility. Definitely kind of pie in the sky, not necessarily what we need here, but a lot of lessons to be learned on what we should look at as far as a RFP that we put out, surfacing options, whether we want to do covered or non-covered. Some of those maintenance costs are all things that we need to consider as we look at planning for pickleball courts. So would like to do that in the next couple of weeks, so I can grab a couple of you, but just want to open up to your thoughts about locations. One of the locations we had talked about, Neal Park was the original location for the project. Sumner is another location. We've talked quite a bit about Fort Nugent. There's kind of two areas, one next to the basketball courts, and then in the northwest region of the park, we have plenty of space to put as large a facility as we want. We could have 20 pickleball courts in that facility if we wanted to. We have disc golf that has a hole by there, but we're looking at reconfiguring how the disc golf course is laid out also. So
If we put the pickleball courts up there, would there still be room to make a separate exit and entrance out of the park?
yeah, and we're going to probably need to do that anyway, one way or another.
Yeah.
So talking with Brian Hunt, they're looking at a footprint of 11 acres on the northern side of their property. That leaves the remaining, it's almost 2/3 of field space south of there for public programming for the leagues and things like that. We'll have to talk with them about some kind of easement access to bring a road down to access those. But he seemed pretty favorable. Doing that. So,
If we bring the entrance in there, my concern is also we're gonna have a loss of parking with the school, and so needing to make up parking, and it looks to me like, unfortunately, that's a great place to add parking. Is if that entrance is coming in there, right where we were thinking about that open grassland, just, east of the football fields. Looks like a unfortunate place that we might have to put the parking lot to add additional parking, just based on where it is, because parking's already brutal there, even when there's not soccer jamborees going on.
yeah,
And if football stays there, I mean, football fills up the entire thing too, and we're gonna still be in a pinch there as long as football remains there, so. I mean, unless we're willing to clear those trees.
yeah. And we don't know what the design layout will be as far as, will those parking lots still connect or not? Do we end up separating them? Do we have the school parking for overflow parking? Since we won't have all the field space, we won't need quite as much parking. But maybe we have a extended parking lot down south. That replaces that.
I would like to see for me, I'd like to see it at Fort Ninja Park. It's Premier Park. This is a important, I think, multi-generational sport that seems to be growing. I'd like to see it next to the basketball court and then running almost all the way to the playground, including maybe relocating that statue, if possible. The seed that Tally was talking about. If
There's a
that's,
little bit of grade change to keep in mind there too. That's gonna add expense to it if you go all that far, so. There's probably 4 to 5 feet.
yeah, no, there definitely is. But knowing that, I think that if we're gonna put in Fort Ninja, gives us the most flexibility with what happens on the other side, knowing that there's been a couple of thoughts in regards to the use of that space. That way we can make sure we do the court surface correctly. We need to build these things to the highest level, so you actually have a really quality, long-lasting playing surface, even though it makes for more expense. Doing it with asphalt or doing it with, lesser quality concrete, just maybe not the best choice. And then I think that makes the most sense to me, so that it doesn't become disturbed later by other needs or traffic.
So that's something to reach out about too, is what kind of surface do they like? I talked to a tennis pro this weekend. He was very adamant. He talked about the different grits, and that some grits were better than others, as far as being able to slide your feet across it and not, or harder on people. And the asphalt he liked because it was a little bit softer than the concrete on the joints and stuff like that. So
Asphalt's not recommended.
it's not,
Well, and the worst part about that though too is with the weather that we have is the asphalt settles and then we get places where we puddle. Tennis courts, otherwise we get places where we puddle and then you're squeegeeing, plus you're looking at some of these dips and depressions, and knowing that we have a large segment of older people who are going to use these things, let's try to keep that surface as flat as possible. We don't need, those little,
what grit though is another
Yeah, that's the
question.
next-
What texture do they want on it?
and I think Mr. Tuningo from Skagit had some feedback on that. He was talking about it, but I didn't catch everything he was saying. But they did a pretty good job with those ones in Skagit, and it's a really nice facility.
Blaine, do we know how the pervious asphalt's working out down at have you heard any complaints about the pervious asphalt at the new development grocery outlet? Seems to me like it drained quite well this winter. I know long-term, we still don't know what the results of that are, right?
Yeah,
But
it's kind of got some grit on it. I don't know what they'll do with the bar. Yeah, pervious does require maintenance. Yeah, as far as vacuuming it, they recommend that you do that.
Jim, does anybody on the city council play pickleball?
not that I'm aware of. I don't.
I have to think about during this election.
Could become a campaign cry. I play pickleball.
That type of asphalt though for like court sports is a trip hazard because it isn't smooth, and even when you do finish it,
Well, that depends upon the underlayment.
yeah.
If you spend good money on your underlayment, your 5/8 do your 1.25 and your 5/8 layers properly and compact it properly, asphalt does work. But if you don't, then you get the ripple effect like you're talking about.
But also the ability to slide the court shoe.
If you have to repair, say someone punches a hole in it for some silly
Yeah.
reason or burns it, asphalt is much easier to repair.
Well, and what Tally is also
That's
getting to
totally
is,
true.
is concrete's a lot more expensive to
A lot more
pour.
expensive.
Yeah, to
$250
build.
a yard, I think, right now. is
Yeah,
what
to
it's
build.
going for.
Right. Oh, 100%. It's way more expensive.
Yeah.
And then you have expansion and expansion joints or lack thereof and the inevitable
You're right.
cracking if you don't have the expansion
Post-tension
joints.
concrete,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Engineering on the.
You want to make
the
sure
rebar.
though that you consider all the different costs, like maintenance, what's the useful life of the court surface? And the surfacing does make a big difference. There's a lot of different ways to do that. So, and we can bring you guys all the costs, of the different options. Also, I just like, outside of some discussion of playable surface, things like lighting, covering, and location.
And fencing and expansion possibilities.
And fencing,
all
yeah,
those.
you only really need 8-foot fences as opposed to, I think it's 10 feet for the tennis.
You're also looking for quantity on courts, aren't you, Brian? How many
What?
courts they want to put in?
I'm definitely with Eric, though, that we gotta build it right. I mean, too many times we've just kind of taken the low approach and then we sit back 5 years later and go, oh. So,
Well, I think we definitely should have multiple locations for the system. It would be nice to have one location where you could do tournaments that has enough capacity. And some of those kind of.
Yeah, I
nicer
got that
features.
comment back from pickleball players. that
What does anyone know how many courts are required for a tournament setup?
Depends on the tournament.
Yeah.
I was told by somebody who does this a lot in the Midwest that runs events, 8 was the minimum you'd want to see for youth camps or tournaments. Unless you want to be there for multiple days or not have a draw.
That's nice because it's
Yeah.
one more opportunity for groups in the area to have use it for fundraisers. It's one less auction, dinner auction that has to be put together for a group.
So if we would have done the tournament oriented, we probably would have been more competitive on the rural county economic development. But when we came in on 4, but yeah, you start getting into tournaments and you get overnight
Bring
stays
people in
and that
and-
kind of
multi-day
stuff.
tournaments.
So, yeah.
And that's what we see. Sometimes it's better to ask for more in a grant ask than less, because they want to see those larger impact projects.
I have a couple of comments. One would be a field trip is necessary. Because talking about it here, I can visualize the location, but I can't visualize all the nuances. So that would be really helpful.
Okay.
The other is, I think we were talking about it kind of now, is expansion potential wherever it goes. Then I have a question on, I don't know how it works in the city on projects. I worked for the federal government during my career, and ideally you get projects, you get the project ready. All the design was done, all the discussion we're talking about now is done. So you fund that, maybe you use the 50,000 for that. And you get the real pros and know what you're talking about, they give you the options, and they actually come up with a full design. So then you need to look for the money to complete the project, but at least you have a design-ready project. And it can address all the things that we're talking about now. Location, grade, you name it. Because of the pros. I don't know how it works in the city for contract.
Yeah, we can divide out those project costs between design and construction. I mean, as far as funding, most of this is going to be through alternative funding sources, REIT, or our park impact fees. We probably also use as well.
Brian, what is the relationship with the tennis players and the tennis ball and the tennis courts? Because I know they were had some financial input or interest, or there's
We only have
something
one tennis court.
just that one that's on.
The two sites, one location, 2 courts on it, yeah.
I never see anybody.
There are,
That must
I've
be
gotten
just the
feedback,
times
that
I-
don't take those words.
Oh, I've heard that too, yeah, for years.
But, and that's always like a struggle, when you're doing surveys and need assessments is, do we not have them because we don't have the facilities, or do we not have facilities because we don't have them,
Right.
If you build it, will they come, will people come out
Yeah.
and work? Oh, I'm going to take up tennis. We have these beautiful tennis courts.
They're
This
there, I get the
pickleball.
phone calls.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
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 Well, the pickleball club pays dues, was it $30?
Yeah, but I think
per
that's
person?
mostly to use the indoor facility at Christian
Right.
school.
But I think if you had a facility that was, they have a waiting list for people to
Yeah,
get into
it's
that.
possible.
I mean, I could see how they could potentially help support.
Could we look at the idea of dedicating money to design development. So that we then know, we know location, we know cost, we know material, we know all, then we know also what amount of money we're gonna need to complete the project, to actually do the
Because the
construction.
engineering estimates.
And all that rest of it is just, then it seems like it's easier to do. Again, I don't know what the engineering or contractual requirements are for the city. But it gets a step closer, maybe the 50,000 is good use of the 50,000.
That's typically how we go about it for larger projects.
Yeah. One more comment, whatever happens, it's gonna be far down the road. Is there any budgetary resource that we can tap? What would really help the current courts at Rotary Park would be put up some kind of a barrier on the ends of the courts so the balls don't go way out of play. And it doesn't require a lot. It would just require 2 foot, 3 foot. It could even almost be temporaries, something to put so the balls stay in somewhat similar proximity to the court, because it's really kind of an impediment to play. And I don't know what it would cost. I don't know what the options would be. I don't know if there's any kind of repair project money or quick contract kind of thing we can do, but if we could look at something like that, that would improve the current courts until something.
Yeah. Like I said, so those courts are the school districts. They have no interest in really putting any money into that facility.
Would they allow us to do something like that?
Possibly. I mean, they were fine with us going forward with making improvements there. We just didn't have the funding to do the scope that we're looking at.
Well, the council wasn't really too interested in investing in something that wasn't the city's too, so there's hesitancy there.
You can get temporary construction fencing wall. It's not the most attractive thing. It's a pretty solid base that's 4 feet or 3 feet that you can string along there. I mean, we've used it for controlling traffic and disc golf fence and stuff. It's not that expensive. We just bought it with the club money.
I know fencing is a big conversation about it, but I heard that a lot when I talked about those courts. That was like almost half the cost of putting those courts.
But I mean, it really is nothing more than stopping the wiffle ball. I mean, really, that's what it amounts to. And in tournaments and that, they use these foam things that try to fold things, and they just set them out there and then they take them away because it just stops. So I don't know what all the options are. I guess just asking if there's some way to do temporary improvement for play until this other project. As part of our working group, whoever's assigned to those.
Contact the school district, see what they'll let us do, because that's terrible place for rollaways. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, right, we have a subcommittee now for facilities. Pickleball courts is one of those, I think, 5 of the facility improvements. So we can look at that. Any other thoughts on location, scope, things you'd like to see included in it? We definitely do a field trip if we're going to have more than the people that are assigned to that subcommittee, though. We'll have to notice it. But I'd recommend let's go look at the potential sites, maybe take a tour up at the facilities at the Skygate College.
And maybe look at somewhere, it'll be a quick stop, but at least that would be an option to.
Sumner, Neal Park, yeah, from what I understand, there had been talk about them around Windjammer Park, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but I've heard a lot of, feedback.
It's like,
Oh,
forget it.
no, you don't want
Well,
that.
they were originally part of the Windjammer plan. I think where the basketball courts are now was originally planned as pickleball courts and somewhere in
Well,
the
pickleball players will say
process.
it's way too windy and it's not.
Yeah. I think the site with the least amount of wind is going to be, that could fit in 8 courts minimum would be the best site.
Yeah, but anyway, I go with the idea.
And less seagulls dropping clams on the court. If anybody remembers the old tennis courts down there, that's all they were for, spraying clams.
So there's that area here of Fort Musen, I think, this footprint. We also looked over here by the volleyball courts.
So I think I definitely agree with Eric that if we were to put it at Fort Nugent, like depending cost wise, over by where the volleyball courts would be, I think would be a better option. And then leaving that other space open for additional parking.
And following up to what Jim said, which I guess was a follow-up to what I said, I would rather do less things and have them of a higher quality than more things of a lower quality. We've tried that, I think. And I think we know that that doesn't.
It's a lot
that doesn't
easier to
enhance.
expand on a good base that was built right to begin with than to continue putting the money into the repair of something built substandard.
Plus, we know that we need to generate more excitement around the parks. And if we do stuff to the higher quality, that will demonstrate, I think, commitment and conviction as we sort of push this new Parks and Rec idea and vision forward. And when we build stuff like that, that's of a higher quality, I think that's really going to help with public enthusiasm. More than some other ad hoc reactionary. We don't need any more participation trophies, I don't think. You know what I mean? That's it, now they don't want to make more work for you.
Bring it on.
I'd rather actually have a structure that makes less work for you guys with more money up front, so you can task yourself elsewhere.
We'll get it done.
Is there anything else for pickleball courts? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the Windjammer Park feedback report.
Sabrina's not here.
How would you like us to wing it?
Everyone get a copy.
Give them out or fill it out?
You going back there?
Skipping through it online this morning, but it would be good to share.
I can pull it out.
I really went out.
You have it?
Jay, do you need one back there? Jay?
I'm gonna make
What was
calls.
attached to
Give them out to the left.
No, it's not attached to the packet, but it's in the
the email?
email, the calendar invite.
Yeah. You want me to share?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, if everyone has that in front of them. So the survey was completed last year. Sabrina spent some time putting the summary together here. We'll just go over it and talk a little bit about really what priorities you want going forward. So the park is estimated to have about a $408,000 project funding balance. And that should complete some of the design work for future improvements of the park. We have a 6-year CIP that includes additional $676,000 in funding, as well as an additional $250,000 in 2027. So it's chunked a little bit. It's not 1.3 all up front. At 408,000 now, we have 676 coming up, but all in total, about 1.3 million for some of these improvements. All right. So you'll see the budget there from the general fund, park impact fees and REIT funding, and the fund balance that's projected there at the bottom. I'll make the 1.3. So Some of the projects that aren't included in the community feedback process were the crosswalk at Beeksma Drive, which was completed, the Angel of Creativity that's getting installed at Flintstone Park. Heaters in the kitchens, ADA access to beach trails, a pilot program for beachfront native growth areas, a water irrigation replacement, which is in dire need of, lagoon dock replacement, which we're working on right now with the permits, and then watercraft ramp. All right, so there's a map there that highlights a couple of the different improvement areas, mostly around the softball, baseball fields, the east side of the park there, and then the entry and those east side parking lots, as well as the shoreline. Now we have a shoreline renovation project, restoration project that is going to be larger scale with the city. The Windjammer portion of that is just getting rolled in. They'll come from Fred Marsh out to the marina. We just took some funding to do emergency erosion control just underneath those pathways along the shoreline during the last king tides. So this is a little bit about the outreach, the postcards that went out. We had QR codes that was put into the utility bill insert, newspapers and flyers. So we tried to do multi approach in different formats to reach a good audience. Some of the questions that were asked: where do you live? Some of those demographics. What improvements do you want to see in the park? How would you describe yourself and how often you visit the park? What's the most important potential improvement? Even something that might not be listed above. We had 703 respondents. 34% use the park every week. The windmill was identified as high priority from those respondents. The majority of them live within city of Oak Harbor city limits. About 27% lived outside of the city. Then we got some demographics around military and other commuters.
Do you know how most of the responses were received, either electronically versus forms?
I don't know. Good question for Sabrina.
Yeah, electronically was
Okay.
a
I'm just curious,
large
because the
majority.
demographic for 75 and older is so low, I was suspecting it was electronically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other issue I have is with the stuff that was mailed. What was the circulation outside the city limits of Oak Harbor, knowing that the data skew so high? Was there, did we use a mailing list for only those inside the city? Or how did we get that out?
We didn't use a mailing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in utility bills.
The utility
Yeah,
bill, I
only
guess, is a-
city customers.
So the data skewed that high because the largest amount of circulation was, of course, those inside city limits. So that's why we're seeing. Right.
She did a lot of outreach
Okay.
to get outside, but certainly the people who are paying the taxes are the people in the city. So we wanted to get a good base of the residents of the city, but certainly you see on there 27% identified as outside the community. So
Sounds like with you, I'm kind of a dated junkie, but I also am curious because of the windmill being the #1 priority. Were there opportunities for people to submit more than once? Like, did somebody respond to this survey? Like, out of those 703 responses, are they all unique? Or is there a way they are
Yes.
all
I
unique?
think the Survey Monkey does that, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
Demographics, largest demographic, 35 to 44. And then you had skewed older population, 45 to 74. And then you had younger adults, 25 to 34 as the next demographic. Not a lot of respondents as far as youth, minorities, youth or minors. Why people visit the park. visiting and kind of enjoying the just nature outdoors was definitely foremost. So walking and running, beach, which my feeling kind of goes along with that as well as dog walking. All those just, hey, I just want to go and be at the park. I want to walk along and just kind of enjoy the outdoors. That was definitely the large use. And then you have playground, the splash pad. That's kind of that next thing. Farmers market, I'd probably tie that in with other special events. Coming for a specialized activity at 35% there. And then you see some of the other uses like the basketball courts, Little League, sports kind of amenities, 7 to 13%, kitchen rentals, camping, things like that. Some of the other activities were bird watching, Pokemon Go, playing music, I love that. Lagoon swimming. Now, they had that as an other lagoon swing, but if you, splash pad lagoon is kind of there in that 35%. Also a very big draw. You go there on a weekend, there's like 200 people just sitting around. Enjoy the splash pad lagoon. So I don't think there's anything that really surprised us out of that, other than just giving a good, I guess, framework of people just want to go and enjoy the park.
It jumps out at me if less than 2% said they don't go to in general. But then I guess you wouldn't follow the survey if you didn't go.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What's the
Well, there's a passionate small group of people that are upset with the changes, so they're gonna, for those that don't go, there's still gonna be the 2% that needs to say something.
All right, so responses about the most important items for the top 3 were the windmill, picnic areas, and shoreline enhancements, which again kind of fall along in line with why people are coming to the park, just for the aesthetic, just to picnic and enjoy the outdoors, places to sit and shade and have nice access to the harbor there.
Brian, with those shoreline enhancements that we're talking about dealing with the state, is there any way we can, approach the conversation with them about clearing an area of driftwood? Right now, anybody ADA has absolutely zero access to our, gorgeous beach. I mean, the pictures, there's one picture right here in the front kind of tells it all, right? It just seems it's, well, I get they are, but
pushback, but you definitely have the right approach. ADA access is kind of an exemption that they can make.
So we're talking about keeping an area clean, right? And I know they've been giving us garbage even about the boat ramp, right? But again, it's a conversation I think it would be great to have while we're having this shoreline conversation.
Designated as a beach area, we get some more. We talked about Catalina Park being a beach area, and I think they were going to design it so it kind of comes in and out and doesn't stay there. That's the intent. We're trying to do that when we talked about it, because when we talked about Catalina, one of the council members was concerned about it just becoming a beach, becoming a log area. But certainly that's an area we could talk about, the design area here. On it.
Well, especially if we have the conversation with them.
If you do the slower area, they like that for salmon habitat. So there's some benefit there with the beach area, not having necessary log obstruction. So
Woodstone is another spot too that they asked for an opening to put into the beach access. And we have done that before in the past, but
well, it just seems to me this is a large beach. It's the heart of our Oak Harbor, right? And then once you get down onto the beach, there's a large area for you to be able to explore and stuff where, Flintstone's kind of compact, and even Catalina's compact is where you could go once you get down onto the beach.
just gotta aim those fireworks in the right place.
Well, further on, we'll see the original master plan. The original master plan had access. points. That was the engineer.
So the sixth one was them being able to pick from a list, their top 5 choices. Well, only that's 4 on here. And I'm still not sure like what the difference between these top 3 and the
So-
feedback priorities.
So the top 3 was, that's responses. So they had an opportunity. There was a group of items left over from prior improvements that weren't done. And so those were a list of the ones that they could pick through. The other one, there was an option to list whatever you like, what's not on the list. So the page before, I think the responses, that's the comments,
Okay.
like, and then she had to sift through them to see, and that's how the most important items to them.
Okay, from their comments.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that's the top
And then
3
there was
from
a
their
list.
comments, and then from the list of priorities, which included amphitheater and pavilion improvements, a great lawn, bulletin board, reader board, dog park, dog run, drivable grass.
You can actually jump it, if you go ahead to the actual survey that is done, you can see that, and that'll kind of help you understand the responses, but that's why she put the survey later on in here as part of this package, so you can understand how it was
It's
presented.
appended at the end, yeah.
Okay, so windmill activities for all ages, baseball fields, picnic areas, add more trees, better maintenance of the area, security and safety improvements. Improvements respondents wanted to see. 112 said windmill, camping, RV, tent camping, activities, parking, adding more parking near the playground was another big one. Dog park fence, some kind of fenced in area for dog run, and then add additional playgrounds, recreation center, indoor area for kids, volleyball courts, increased maintenance and activities, different programs for adults, teens especially.
I think those 2 pages are the most telling, quite frankly. I mean, feedback about priorities, right? That's feedback about our priorities, right? That was the list that we gave them and said, okay, from this list, give us your feedback. But I think, when we can see what people are writing in, right? Where, let's face it, to take something that's not on a list in front of you and not check that box, instead to write something in, means that's pretty special to you. Right? Versus just checking a box. So, I think these 2 pages are certainly the most telling. I mean, I see some things on here, that, we've certainly touched on food truck vendors, ice cream, and I appreciate you working on that, Liz and Brian, and address homeless drug users, right? I mean, certainly we did not have that upon our checklist, but it's something that somebody took the time to write in. And obviously they're spot on, right? It's an issue that we know we have to deal with down there. I mean, certainly it comes back to, making safer security and our safety improvements. I mean, the 2 of those, I think, really go hand in hand. And the reality is, I think that's probably an item that's more in the top 10. It's just how it was worded, right? Using public funds wisely. I mean, that's a great comment, right? Multi-purpose meeting room, recreational use and gathering, those are all things, but this list of top 10 and these top 20 improvements, I think, are pretty spot on.
Yeah, if anyone has comments as you go through, I'm just kind of reading through this, but jump in if there's anything that surprises you or you have any additional comments you want to talk about. So staff recommendations just based on the feedback. Number 1, repair the shoreline. So use our existing funds to repair the shoreline and walking paths damaged by the recent storms. That has to be done or we're going to lose that pathway because it's totally undermined at the last high king tide. We also want to make sure that people have equitable access to there. And I appreciate your comments on the ADA pathway. I totally agree as we do that. enhance the pavilion, request quotes from vendors for enhancements to the current pavilion to improve some uses. But also, I think along with that is just making sure that we're activating it, doing some, whether it's, movies in the park, music in the park, performances, just some fun stuff to bring people down and get them involved. Fix the splash park. So when we first put in the splash park, it was $250,000 to operate that. It was a flow-through system. It was non-recirculatory. So we're looking at different ways that we can be both water conservation conscious, budget conscious, and operate a good amenity that people love. They go crazy for it. When we had that hot weekend when we first opened it up, I went and counted. We had over 200 kids around the splash park, and there's another 100 plus in the lagoon, around the lagoon. And so there's well over 300 people all together right there. Tally's been working with me quite a bit on the splash park. We've done some changes to the controller and the programming. So far, we're seeing about a 40% water savings out of that. But we do need to replace the controller and just make some different improvements there. We have $300,000 for a reuse of fluent water system. We can look at doing a couple different things. We do have to treat the water before we can hook it back into even an irrigation system, which I found out last weekend. So we can't just dump it into a non-potable tank and then reuse it for irrigation. So a couple different things we can do with that, whether we replace it with a recirculatory system or do some other kind of tie-in. So at least those costs are being shared between operation of the splash park and our irrigation, other areas that we're.
Well, yeah, because one of the biggest expenses in that water operation isn't the cost of the water, it's the cost of treating the water. That $250,000 figure you gave, over 150,000 of it is actually going back to the sewage treatment fund to cover the cost of membranes and pump operations and all the things, because it's based on the gallons.
Yeah.
So we charge ourselves to treat our own water, and are we on the stuff that we're watering Windjammer Park with, now that we've got those meters separated out separate, are we still charging ourselves for watering Windjammer Park through sewage treatment? We're still paying the sewage treatment fee for everything. Every gallon of water we dump on Windjammer Park, we're paying for the water. And then even though it's going in Windjammer Park, we're paying for the sewage treatment fee, which is probably something we need to take a look at. Obviously, it's going to have an effect upon the sewer budget, but it's going to have a positive effect upon the park budget, and I think better reflect, where that water is going. It's obviously not going into the sewage treatment facility. And now that we've got those meters broke out separately, I think that's a discussion
Yeah, we can do deductible.
that we need to have.
Because we're talking, it's like 3 times the price for a gallon used for a gallon treated, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
It will allow us to run the splash park more if I do some type of system like this too, more hours. Then we'll spend more money on incoming water.
Makes sense.
Improved picnic options. We want to put some pavilions over on the west side of the lagoon. Right now, everything's pretty focused heavily on the east side. Because you have the splash park there, but also that's where we have the seating, right? So we want some covered, shaded seating options on that west side to draw people over there, especially as we make improvements to that west side of the park. Maybe put in a nice regional draw playground on that side as well.
Are we thinking reservable or non-reservable?
We want to mix of both, right? So we probably want a good pavilion on that side as well as some covered tables.
Making ways to pay for it.
Yeah, but I think having drop-in facilities is imperative.
Yeah, not like the kitchens, but an open air, not a pavilion like we call it pavilion, but like a typical shelter.
Well, what
type.
we got to do is we got to get past this concept of, people thinking, oh, if we build those, it's just going to be a place for the homeless people to sleep on the picnic tables. I mean, that's not a reason to not do it.
Yeah.
We just got to get past that.
If we make them 4-side open, I mean, it's the same concept as the Portland News, right? You have easy transparency to see what's going on and problems can be dealt with as needed. I would add to this that if we're going to have rental ones, that we actually maybe provide the idea for people to add onto their rental windscreens that can be attached easily. To those, I've seen these in other facilities for places that catch a lot of wind right here, and it'll allow people to enjoy this more. Plus, it's an upcharge for the city. But when somebody reserves the ones that are actually rentable, that we can, and then they can be installed and taken down, but we have a source to fund that, and it allows for more rentals, a higher quality of experience.
It still keeps that open
But then
feel.
we still have the open view, and they'll be taken down after the thing is there, and so they're paid for.
The comment. Yeah, and those all kind of 4, 5, and 6, those all kind of go hand in hand with those, right? So, and then the interpretive center. So we took a look at that space. Probably will be a board discussion item at some point. There's a lot of different things we could do with that space. You know, we'd have to do some reconfiguration of access inside of there. Right now, it will go right into the inner courtyard of the water treatment plant, which we don't really want public access into that. So we might have to put in some walls or some security doors or another egress out of there.
Make that an emergency access door, exit door with an alarm.
You couldn't even do it. You still have to have somebody monitoring it.
And how it's configured right now, but we can make some improvements to that.
You could have it have a security person. I mean, I've been in other places where we had somebody, they just pay it for the rental. So that was somebody to monitor the alarm if it went off. We would have to have somebody there who couldn't trust the people that are renting it that are public that don't really have the interest.
So I'm assuming we have to have a second exit out of there probably for
Yeah,
fire code. If you have over 50 people.
Right.
yeah, it wasn't built for, it was built for just kind of an interpretive center, which is only 60 people in there, and it could certainly go a lot higher. Seating and stuff, so.
We've already looked at reconfiguration of that, so that north west corner where you have the bank of windows there, you can easily put in a emergency exit that is exit out side instead of inside right now. So right now the only other exit takes you inside a locked gate, which wouldn't qualify for egress for fire purposes anyway. So a couple different ways we can do that, but what we end up putting in there, whether it's just a rental where we program the space, whether it's a self-serve educational display thing, or we do a rotating art gallery in between, a lot of different options there. Right now, it's a fairly underutilized space. They use it for a few public meetings or staff meetings, but if you haven't been over there, another place we probably should take a little field trip is go take a look at that.
You could do a meeting there.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we might do
Can I
that.
go back real quick to the top 20 improvements
Yeah.
about the parking and add more near activity space? Because it's over 20 respondents to that, so it puts it in the top, whatever, 6 or 7. Clearly that's not feasible, but it's definitely a concern for that whole side, and it becomes even more of a concern when Little League's present. I mean, it's Bay Shore is not, when, like with soccer at Fort Nugent, it becomes unsafe. You know, I can't tell how many times I've held my breath and tried not to run over kids through there because there's no sight lines. People are parking and they're over the lines into the road. And so that seems like a pretty big concern. It's a safety issue. And so long as the interest to keep the baseball fields there are, of course, we have nowhere to put them anyway. I don't know what can be done. We're kind of landlocked there.
Yeah,
You
so right, it's kind of a larger discussion. Right now, you're right. Anytime that the leagues have games there, the parking lot's totally full, and then you have parking on the street and into back behind the clean water facility.
Yeah.
So it's really a discussion of, all right, do you find some way, and you're right, without taking up more, cutting into the park and taking more park space, the parking. It's really a discussion of, do we need to have more ball fields in an alternate location? Do we move these fields?
Well, the answer to that is yes. Like, those baseball fields need to be moved. It's not a great place for baseball. I know they want them there because they're all together, but it's 10 degrees colder than everywhere else. It seems to be either foggy or rainy, even when it's not, which is, you know, not very enjoyable for baseball. Ask anybody who's ever pitched. And the fog down there, I mean, it stays wet. You
Well,
know,
I think the key to
But-
replace, if we're gonna replace those and to avoid the pushback, because you also notice
Yeah.
Baseball fields keep
Uh-huh.
number 3
Yeah.
in the written in responses, and there's a lot of passion about that. I think the key is part of the discussion we've been having, obviously, about Midway Boulevard and the area around Memorial Stadium. I think the key, if we're going to do baseball fields and we're going to replace those, we need to replace them in our community and not on the outskirts. I think that's the, I think that's the love of those fields, is they're right in the neighborhood, right? They're right in our downtown core. So
Surprisingly, one of the things I hear too is it's 3 or 4 generations of families that have played on those fields down there too. It's a historic thing.
yeah,
That's the tough part.
I think also a fear of losing any other, sports fields.
yeah.
I think if we had a project that actually showed them what a real dugout could be for them, as opposed to kind of what we have, which frankly are like 7th grade doghouse projects, and it's not bad. It's just because the nature of the abuse from the climate there, some of the traffic that likes to come and nest in those, we'll call it, and what they've had to do to sort of slap it together to make it serviceable. I think they might be persuaded if they saw a greater vision for a different sports complex somewhere. But I think irrespective of what happens with that, we still need more parking down there for the area.
Well, the frustrating thing is, the last time I was down there for ball fields, the whole area, you're right, it's totally jammed up. People parking on the streets and in no parking areas and,
Yeah.
On the curbs and stuff, but then a walk behind the clean water facility and there's like 2 cars parked there. I mean, it was.
Well, part of that was because there wasn't parking back behind. There were signs that was restricted for there's a bank at some point. So we've removed those.
Yeah,
since,
well, I'm just
but
talking
it'll take a while for
about a
people
couple of
to
weeks ago. Just a couple of weeks ago. And so I was just kind of like, geez, people, you could have walked a half a block and you wouldn't have had to park on the sidewalk. But you're always going to have that,
Well, it's
right?
that creature of habit thing, right? They first saw those signs to not park there, and now they're stuck with that. Well, better find the closest spot they can on the street.
Well, and maybe, the conversation we're having about, the west end of Pioneer Way and that traffic diet and creating that, pull-in parking and stuff, maybe that's at least some sort of small help.
Is there any availability on that piece of land that's next to the Hal Ramley Park? I know that's
Currently up for sale.
Yeah, that's been a conversation piece for a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's
but-
on the open market right now.
Talking about the Lehigh property?
Yeah, they just put it on the market.
Yeah, we surround it with. So. Hasn't been on my radar, but you can add it. I mean, we like buying. I like buying properties,
Lane's a buyer.
I'm a buyer.
I would rather have that whole thing.
I'm
even
on
if-
the idea that people that, they don't make any more land, so, you want it, yeah, and, we can buy stuff and it's for community use, so.
I'm thinking of how Ramley had to be condensed down to just a corner, so that if we were able to procure that, or even any of that space could be converted into some form of parking, I think anything there would help, because it's not.
We definitely need to have discussions about the community garden and how Ram in general, that, the use of the park area, how to best activate it. We don't want it to just be a bordering site, right? And the proximity to the bus stop, encourages that with the way that we have it set up and designed.
Well, that combined with, the weekend drop-offs, right? I mean, that's the drop-off spot on the weekend because they don't want to drop them off at the church because they have activities up there. So that's the spot where they get dropped off and picked up to be taken down to the homeless shelter on the weekends. And so that's created that habit because that's become.
Because there's activities,
Yeah.
the way that you get rid of that situation is to have an activated space for,
And it's an economic development issue, because it's not very gracious to our small businesses who occupy those areas to have that being utilized in the way that it is, I would say.
The food forest project is something that I have to talk about how we want to go about maintaining that in the future, because there's not a lot of participation in it anymore.
So another thing with that property that's for sale, it has right of way through Mary Park. So basically, they're gonna put an interest, the proposal that went to court and was tossed out is going to consume some of that park property. We can't stop it, it's the way the property is written.
Well, it's another one of those properties we're gonna have to look at, similar to the property we purchased up on the corner, right? Is it ever going to be developed as market rate? Is there ever an opportunity where somebody's going to say that's a great place to build and build, or is it going to continue to just sit there as a vacant, underutilized piece on our, in our central business district? And is it the city that ultimately is going to have to step up and figure out an appropriate use for it, to make something happen there?
Yeah, and sometimes if it doesn't happen, it's about four rule, it won't be really developed about four, the city coming intervene, will come in, and that's what economic development is. I mean, if the economy does itself, we don't get involved.
It's a tough property to develop between the fact that it's on fill dirt, and so you have to build on pylons down there, and the fact that you've got that slope on Pioneer Way, how do you build up to Pioneer Way and have that join up and meet our code that says you have to butt on Pioneer Way if you build a building. So
whatever we do, we want to correlate with the Main Street, because it was the Main Street that did a court case that development stopped. So
Even if it was turned into parking for Little League and the businesses, the rest of the way in that area, you have a nice stairwell going up to it. I would think that would benefit businesses for access for people to come walk the downtown district.
well, ideally you want commercial.
Yeah, I mean,
All right, so feedback, suggestions, your recommendation as a board for improvements. All the rest that you have back there is basically the plan that went out and the survey itself. You can see the questions. This was all, so everything in that yellow on back was what was sent out to people to look at and then respond with. So again, staff recommendations, repair and enhance the shoreline, enhance and activate the pavilion, make some improvements to the splash park. I'd include the lagoon in with that. And then just some improved and additional seating, shaded areas, picnic opportunities around the park. And then looking at the use of the interpretive center, or how we do that. So give me your thoughts as a board, as you look through some of these feedbacks from the public. Are there things you agree with, don't agree with? Are there things that are important to you? To me, I would say that just looking at how people use the park, even though we put these as our recommendations, I would probably personally want to look at, all right, how do we enhance that experience of people coming and just walking through the park and enjoying the park? Whether it's bollard or light safety lighting along the trails and pathways, ADA pathways down to the beach. How do we connect the beach in with the rest of the park a little better? Making sure that it's dog friendly. How do we help that conflict between park, especially sport league users and people who want to walk their dog? We do have those condos, apartments, whatever that's next to the park. They don't really have public space for kids to just go out and run, or for them to let their dog out, so they utilize the park. So how do we work with the owners of that property to meet those needs? Some of your thoughts. Other things that really didn't see here, especially looking at the west side of the park, the parking layout there. You have a basketball court, it's kind of underutilized, could use some improvements, but just a lot of potential over in that area. We also have a drainage issue and kind of a topsoil need there in the main part of the middle part of that park. We have like old, some footprints of old playgrounds and things like that that need to be taken out and things like that. So.
I'm really struck by the enhancement of the pavilion area, and I'm thinking about, and Cynthia, I don't know if you can hear me, but last year there was the relationship with the Oak Harbor Arts Music Festival and the Saratoga Festival, where they brought concerts. There was a series of several concerts through August, and as each one went, got more and more attended. They're going to do it this year again, and it'll be really interesting to see how many more people. It's just such a nice idea, this aspect of community gathering. And I think as many opportunities as we have for people to gather and build a sense of community, I think those are really valuable. And, you know, that happens a little bit in sports, but not really, because it's more of watching, you know, versus sitting next to each other and talking. And so I think that's my leaning toward the development of parks. And listening to you, Brian, talk about having counted the 300 kids in that splash park area, I'm also kind of struck by this building more shade opportunities there for the safety of the kids. So as I look at that, I think the word gathering just is kind of in my.
Call attention to, in the last page, there's an attachment B. That's the 2016 integration plan. That was done in 16. It had no cost on it. Assuming if you had unlimited amount of money, what would you do with the park? So, and we didn't get that. I mean, you can go back, the other plan is what we ended up getting in there for reference. So it doesn't actually plug and play into like you just continue these phases. So that's the issue we have, is where we go from here, because the slate is pretty, we put in the phase 1 was done. And we could certainly continue some of those. If you look on there, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 beach access is in this plan here. There's a whole small boat launch, like kayaks and such, or boats and launch over there. So there's just, we didn't, and there's actually an amphitheater that's separate from the pavilion and so on here. That was envisioned. I don't know that we really want another amphitheater, but this is just kind of the plan here. And of course, the ball fields are gone, but until we get a replacement, that's not going to happen. So just for reference there. And honestly, we have that budget amount, but we don't really have a plan for the design issue of what that budget was. It was kind of done before I got here, and I actually decreased it and took the money out of places. But I mean, the slate's pretty open on how we want to continue with it. You can do it in a big plan, or you can do it in a piecemeal. I've been more inclined to just doing it in one-offs of what we want to tweak on Jammer Park rather than trying to do a big project. And it's actually the staff's recommendation, and we just let's tweak some of the areas we have.
I looked at the recommendations, and I think like number one stands out to me the most, because I see that as something that extends beyond the park boundaries. I mean, we're, you know, in theory, that's something that can tie all the way from the marina through the downtown and then all the way back. So it gets a lot of use. I think we've had conversations in some of our workshops about how few places there really are in this town to walk outside of sidewalks through neighborhoods. And so that's a big value. So I see, you know, repairing the shoreline, making sure those walking paths stay not only usable, but improved, I think, so that we can continue to handle the traffic and increase the foot traffic down there, which should be valuable for a whole lot of things, including the safety. The more people we can put out there healthfully using the park, the better. And then I moved down to 4, 5, and 6, I think, next. I'm not too worried about the pavilion. That'd be for me as let's generate some revenue by the use of it, and then use that as the proof of concept so that we can enhance it by having rented it out and then put that money back in there because we're generating from it now. And then we'll use that as a seed money to further enhance this, because we know we're getting people there. And then we can, you know, do more of the gathering around it, because it's pretty usable right now. Should it be improved? Yeah, but let's continue to grow that so that we can do that. But then these other things, I think, fit what the survey needs were. You know, people are gathering down there, people are walking along there, we're giving them a spot to rest, we're giving places for these 300 kids on these warm days. But also, I think these are all multi-generational things that can be used as well. Like there's nothing in 4, 5, and 6 that says it has to be tied to a certain age group, and including with the shoreline. None of these are tied to just one particular demographic, one particular age group, one particular level of accessibility. We do this ADA. So we can now be pretty inclusive with who all can use these, provide more options. We have all that space out there, and a lot of people will give the feedback that it looks pretty Spartan.
So we have right around the lagoon there, they never, between the phases, it was kind of old phase Windjammer, new phase Windjammer. They never completed the path. It's a prime example from the swimming lagoon to the boardwalk.
Right.
If you did that at the right slope, which Alex and I've looked at it, you could do it. And you could provide another alternate path in the park, a whole new pathway that actually links to something.
Exactly.
And then the other thing out there that needs to kind of happen is little teardrops for like an upgraded picnic tables would be good, because our picnic tables are getting weathered down, they're beat up.
So we still have the circle where the old pool went.
Yes,
It's still there. What do we want to do there?
you could do a neat gazebo even on that, in that area or something that allows for picnicking and that sort of thing, even another leasable space potential.
So we still need to move some vegetation away from the amphitheater that's kind of in a way, so there's still some tweaking involved in.
And the old, we were down there looking the other day, and the fastest growing tree down there right now for the shade thing that's kind of interesting, if you look back in the back where the old cottonwood trees used to be, they're coming back. They're back already. They're about 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
They didn't
That
go
sounds
away.
about right, yeah. Well,
So,
and I think with 4, 5, and 6 too, is getting rid of any of those last vestiges of old stuff. Like there's the old seal that's, sported water, the kiddie pool, it's just kind of lingering around out there, which, reminds me of like broken down carnival equipment and somewhere, like that drive-in that was out by Anacortes that sat there for forever unused, you know what I mean? Like, I think some of that stuff just needs to go away and be put to rest, and
even
They
that
finally-
sandbox out there could be upgraded somehow.
yeah.
to
They
a
finally tore down the
playground
snack shack over there. at the
Yeah,
drive-in.
I know, I saw that, I was laughing the other day, it's like after 30 years, they got some progress. But I think that those things just moving on and moving away from them, and they're kind of a sad reminder of, that old stuff, and I don't think it really does us any benefit really seeing that there. So cleaning those spaces up, making a mix of rentable and non-rentable covered picnic areas or shade areas, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think you'll get more families to stick around there longer. And then if we want to do things like bringing food trucks in there and all this stuff, now we have proof of concept that, hey, these people will stick around, and not only for one meal, but potentially for two,
And
which is great.
Bailey's Playground gets rented way more than the other kitchen spaces do because of
The playground's up front. I've got to run, guys.
Something else to keep in mind is, how does everything fit together? If we install the windmill out there, we want to bring some pathways over to that, and how's that flow in with the rest of the park? If we put in a large regional playground on that west side, how do we tie that into the central locations of the park?
Right, and knowing the concern that the people wanted the windmill in its original location, with an increased footprint and some of those other things that I don't know how realistic that is.
Well, the
Which
proposal's not going to the original location.
there's a mainline T right there we're working on right now,
Right.
so.
Yeah, it can't be there, but it could be, west of its to help activate that open space in the west, right? That's where the proposal's going to be.
Yeah, it's next to
Further
the
west.
pavilion, a little bit down across from where they were doing the farmer's market.
Yeah, okay.
On the other side there is the proposed location.
And I think it makes sense to have that sort of be a hub from where trails, paths radiate. To bring people through there.
Any other comments?
How much work would it, I mean, you said a few things about turning the interpretive center into a rentable space. Like, I think that would be an amazing thing to have out there. I know there's the city that Alex and I grew up in. They have a rentable space in their interpretive center at their treatment facility, and it gets used all the time. And especially like with the views from it, I feel like that would be a great source of revenue to have that you could then put back into the park. So would it take a lot of funding and changes to make it accessible?
Where's the entrance? Can you just clarify?
It's at the treatment center.
Is it up?
No,
So-
there was originally a
Yeah.
proposal for one above.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was actually a conference center that would have been elevator in and open to the public easily and not going into it. So
I remember that
it's
proposal,
right there
that's
on
why
the
it's
corner
not-
there where the pavilion is. There's a little area that actually says
Southwest.
interpretive center right on it, but it's always blocked.
Southwest
Mhm.
corner, if you go right up from the
Yeah.
splash pad, it's
It has
So the
little, like,
intent was
stream
to
that's going
use-
down.
Use utility and be environmentally kind of education and stuff, and it wouldn't have been open very much. on a limited basis, staffing and stuff, and city had $1 million allocated for designing the things going into it, and came out with the water rates and sewer rates going up. The council pulled out that project to lower the water rates to the residents, because you would have been subsidizing the rate there on that. So, but I don't know, we never evaluated. There's a little bit of a hard thing, but I think we just need to get over it, and let's just figure out how to utilize it better than it is now. But it was, yeah, that walkway up, it takes you a while to get in. Takes you a while to get out. That creek doesn't ever really work. It's supposed to be by it. And yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it just was not designed very well as a community center at all. So it would take, yeah, like you talked about, we have to design it, punch it out at a different location, move benches, and just rehabilitate it. You hate doing that, but at least it's 5 years old now. So as opposed to it went in 2018.
So if that creek doesn't work, can we either fix it or abandon it? I mean, cover it up and, plant along it or anything rather than have it be a reminder of our failures.
It's a poor engineering design.
It does work, but it gets filled up with garbage, leaves, trash.
Yeah.
And then it overflows and starts running across the concrete
Right.
out there. And so that's the big, it's just a maintenance nightmare. You never know when you get the phone call is what ends up happening. Hey, there's water running across the park. That's what ends up
So what
happening.
would it take to get rid of it?
When I first saw, everything could be done with money. So
That was my question, is how much money?
and where do we get the money
Oh,
from?
I got
I
some
mean, we
shovels.
can certainly.
I got
we
some
can
shovels.
program- I mean, we got money programmed. You talked about the budget, so I mean, we can program money for rehabilitating it. I mean, we
Put a door in the front, maybe double access.
I mean, we've got, yeah.
I guess I don't want to see failed projects that don't work, that are a maintenance headache sitting around lingering, becoming the same.
You just don't like looking at it.
Yeah, I don't want to see it. I want to either fix my failures or move away from it. I want to, but especially in a civic level, I just, especially because we want to create optimism and a sense of hope and like joy and engagement and recreation and play. And walking by someone, that could have been, you know what I mean? Like already taking away from the optimism of somebody's using that way of entering the park. Like that's not what we want. We'd like a better feel than walking by the.
Already shut off at the,
Yeah.
we shut it off inside. It actually is controlled in the Swatch Park control.
Okay.
So we just turn the valve off to it.
Yeah.
And then as far as taking it out, I'd have to look, but it may be seamed already, but worst case scenario, you're talking stock type, jackhammer it out, put new soil in, and you're done, pour concrete.
So I think we can start looking at cost estimate for things.
And this is going to council at the July workshop, a little more of a formal presentation. So you guys want to put that on your calendar and plan to give comments. If you want to give it some thought and give kind of your recommendations as a board. Hear that.
It's a lot of thought. I'm getting a headache thinking about all the things that are really, and how do you attack them?
Just like we're doing with our board workshops, try and prioritize and list out the priorities. You could
I mean, we
eat
did,
1,000 apples one bite at a
yeah,
time.
but generally speaking, we've gone out with this survey, we've heard from the community, I think we owe them a response. We have to be able to say, we got this and we acted on these things. So I think we have to take our lead from that. So I put a big quality, I think what's important is the staff recommendations. If that stacks up pretty high to me because they know, the staff knows day to day what's required. Do you look at, do you look at what's going to get the most use over the period of a year as opposed to what's going to get used for 2 months? I mean, there's all those kinds of considerations and we just don't know how to put them all in one bag.
Well, and also
Or do you want to, you want to repair the stuff that we already have as opposed to, I mean, because I think you mentioned it, maybe Jim did. You got this marsh in the middle of a big grass area, which renders that whole big grass area useless for big periods of time. So I don't know. How does that stack?
So,
It's gotta be good.
so consider it this way, this is not a part or nothing, right? This is we have 1.3 million that we can spend to do these projects now. So what are the main priorities on what we want to address first? Everything that is listed in this whole options of, hey, here are things that, priorities, all that's going to get done. It's just a matter of what do we want to tackle first that we're trying to pull out of this, right?
I think it's obvious that, like shady areas, more picnic areas, those are kind of easy place to start, it seems like. My concern is, we've talked about a dog park possibly, we've talked about a destination type playground. And those are kind of big things, but we don't know where they're gonna fit in. So trying to figure out where should we put, rental spaces for picnic areas or what, I'm having a hard time picturing what that's, because right now it feels like we're just scattering them all over that lawn without a plan for the future of any of those other things that we talked about, if they go in Adjournment Park.
Where the larger things would be.
Yeah, I feel like we're starting with the little things and then trying later to fit the big things in, whereas it seems like it'd be easier to figure out the big things.
Not have to move all the small things.
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
So the problem is, we got a master plan that we can't follow. That's why I wanted to talk, that thing just is out. But really, we don't have a revised master.
And I think from my mind, when I was talking about shade structures, was putting them around the already activated things, like around the lagoon where we know is going to kind of be committed to usage rather than, sprawling out. But I think I'm looking at it, we have to fix the problems first. I think we have to fix the mistakes. And, like we've got bad drainage there, that has to be fixed because the land's useless, really, at least for a large chunk of the season due to our climate, if we don't fix that. And then we can figure out what that wants to become once we know what has to be done to fix it. But if we have this marshy, soupy, nonsense in the middle of the park, in the heart of that side of the park, that's a problem. And again, it reeks of bad planning and failure. So I'm like, let's eliminate that stuff. And I admit that that's where, my heart's at, is I want to clean up that stuff so that people will see and, are being heard and responded to, that like, these are the things that we don't like about what happened with Windjammer. There's some concerns about what happened down there. So let's fix these problem areas and then let's put new stuff there, but only after we've done that. Because if we start putting dog parks and playgrounds and all this, then now we got to bring equipment in around that to fix these areas eventually.
We've
And
already had that problem a little bit with benches, people wanting to put benches in and trees, monument ones.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, we're not done with phase 3 yet, so you can't really put them out there. Oh, this is where we want them. And it's like, oh, so now we have to move them or raise them. So you're correct that you don't want to get the horse before the cart on that. Otherwise, we just end up paying to move the stuff later.
And we're gonna have to bring in a lot of heavy equipment, I think, to deal with what's happening in the middle of the park there. And so let's bring all that in, make that mess, fix it. And then, work our way out.
So the marsh is there because the sewer plant didn't have as much fill as it anticipated.
Yeah. Okay.
And we go through about 2 pumps a year on that thing. It pumps a lot of water out of there. There's a lot of water coming out of it.
So might have an opportunity coming up with the marina dredging.
What kind of dirt?
So the first phase was a sewer project.
Yeah.
If you ever put a tank in there for reclaiming water or reserting water into the splash park, there's more material you can potentially get put in there that doesn't require bringing it in.
I think just whatever it takes to do it right. So we have to do it this one time and just be done with it and have the improvement. And, again, I'd rather buy once and spend the money and buy once and cry once, and then not have to buy the same thing over and over again,
I like that. I'm gonna use
So,
that.
yeah, go for it. It's trademarks. I got royalties. No, but I really think that's kind of my methodology. I mean, I approach my life that way too, because, and it leaves me with less regrets, but I mean, especially for the civic interest, and this is their money. And I'd rather spend it one time than spend it 5 times and do it right and give them something, hopefully, that they can be proud of. And know again that we're being attentive to their needs, as Tom said, like, hey, we're fixing these things that y'all mentioned were great. And then we can, again, go down the list like Tom said, and honor the staff, honor the survey results, and put in the stuff that, that they've asked for. It's their money. So let's steward it well, but let's make
I think that to that end, the repairing the shoreline makes more sense too, but so that people can get down there. That big look and feel it. I mean, it's the beach. It's on that survey big
Well,
time.
Brian said it's gonna fall apart if we don't really. I mean,
Yeah.
King Tides just demonstrated that we weren't prepared to handle what we know happens here. With that, so now we have an opportunity. We've learned a lot now, I think, from that. So we have an opportunity to make it better.
So I think we'll probably get a grant for about $300,000 for the initial study. And we're doing we already had a study of the arena. Fortunately, they didn't envision going this way down, so like Brian said, when we go to the yacht club, which was right there was where they left off, all the way down to Fred March, which would include all of and if we get the study there and then we deal with the environmental concerns and all that together, and get a plan that benefits the public and then also benefits the environment too, is the key. So that's on a separate plan. I think it's certainly part of Windjammer, but I think we're pretty confident we'll be able to get some funding for that study. And then we had an estimated cost of $2 million, but I don't like using estimated costs that are design oriented.
You know how that works out.
That issue, so I like, doing the design. That's what you talked about earlier, designing the pickleball for the other design, you have a lot better chance of hitting the mark. Unfortunately, with Hyper Heights, that really wasn't designed out either, so it went from 1.7 to $11.5 million. So
But let's not.
so and now it's on the back burner, but I would think, Windjammer is where all the view, the priority needs to be right now because it's such a great gem. And although it was done as part of the sewer project, and it certainly had a lot of benefits to it and it's being utilized, but Kelly said it kind of married the old and the new aren't meshed very well, so we got to figure out how to finish it.
Because I would tend to agree with Eric on building the base, so that we can go into nicer things that the public will recognize, but it would be nice to throw some things out there, even if it's just 100% beach access, 100% of the time. That means something to people. It doesn't mean something to my wife, because she, walked the dog, we had a dog, and now she's just walking. I mean, you can't get down there. I've tried to climb it over that driftwood. It's pretty precarious. So, I mean, that would just be kind of a small win built on top of, let's say, building the base so we can have more wins.
I love that 100% of the beach, 100% of the time. That's kind of cool. So,
So I don't know if that helps anybody.
Yeah, even with that, that's going to be a maintenance, perpetual ongoing thing though, because even with designing, ADA walkways down into there, we're going to have staff clearing.
Yeah, I understand. There's a continuous maintenance.
The permitting process will be ongoing probably on that sort of project, just like the clearing of the lagoon. You'll have to re-up every year, so we'll have to be doing the fish count surveys, and there's a lot more going into it than just moving the wood out of the way or building a path.
Is there a way that we can tie in, well, the shoreline, but also tie in some of these access points that allow to help mitigate some of the stuff with the lagoon? I mean, I would wonder, I'd be curious in our design process if we could come up with some access there that might help from getting that bridge all, and tunnel all clogged up the way that it is.
I think you could.
I think that would be fantastic.
And kind of seeing what they did with the marina study. There's a lot went into that one. Fortunately, the council didn't want to go and make Catalina Beach, so they lost the priority for the funding.
The lagoon is going to be probably end up being somewhat part of the beach restoration too, because that causeway across to the bridge there is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And this year, we actually had blowover on it where water was running over it into the lagoon. So, and I was talking with Eric, the coworker of mine, and when he was little, he said that causeway was about 60 feet in length out to the beach. So we've lost a whole bunch over the years there. And I keep wondering if they could design it somehow to where it back eddies or washes itself clean even. You know, I don't know if they could do something like that in the future, but that's stuff we could look into.
See if we can do stuff that helps us with the maintenance issues at the time, knowing our staff stuff, as well as provide these other amenities. We should look into, even if it costs a little bit more, what we'll save on labor. You know,
Yeah, so
is,
if we get the design issue, they'll do a public outreach. They'll do a really good job of that. And then they'll come up with cost estimates for items too, so. Yeah, it's kind of a study, but it's really designed. It's gonna be a major component of it. Which gives us, right now, we don't have something at all. So.
Well, I use that as an example. Really, you know, we get some wins, whether it be the beach access or something else.
you're totally right, Tom. We need to demonstrate to our community that we are doing something to address their concerns, that they are heard, that they are valued, that their participation in the survey matters. I mean, that's the only way you get people to actually continue to participate in surveys, is knowing that it's actually, it's not just gathered for data and the curiosity and you go do whatever you want, but the fact that you're responsive and you take these things and do them. And so putting forth some sort of communication says, hey, like, you've been heard, here's the staging of what we're doing to be able to address and meet your needs. And let's move forward on that.
So there's two sides of the story when you're working down there on the beach. There's the animal side, which is gonna come from the Washington State and so on. And that's with moving of driftwood and stuff like that. And the other side is then from the city side of what the people want out of it. And the real trick is on the whole thing, in my opinion, is finding somewhere in the middle ground that everyone can go, okay, we can do this for the animals, we can do this for the people. Give them an access point here, give them a little more something else down the way, you know, or clean up the concrete out of there or something mitigation wise that we can do. So, and that kind of seems to be how it's been working even for lagoon dredging down there, is we get points and we collect the concrete and any creosoted logs whenever we're down there working. We do our fish count and move machines out onto the beach. We collect all that heavy garbage out of there and help. We actually have a stockpile talking to Gideon at points right now with the state. So it's a relationship that we have to cultivate, I think, with the state and try to get both sides of the story fulfilled, the animals and the people.
So I think what we'll probably do then is we'll take your guys' comments and we'll take council's comments after we show this to them and get some of their thoughts. And probably what I'd like to do is just upgrade this plan map to, okay, here's what was completed, here is what's next. Like I said, it's kind of chunked in the funding over a couple of years, so we can do like half of it now and half of it in 2 years when the additional funding becomes available. And we could probably just show that on here. Here's the phase 1 and then phase 2 of the next improvements up there. And that'd be a great communication tool to say, hey, here's what you're going to see installed this next year, and here's what you'll see installed in 2 years from now.
Slides.
Did you want to move on to your director report?
Yeah, since we're just about up on time here. Let's see. So I sent out to you guys the department projects status sheet. I mailed that out to you just for me to take a look at that. That's kind of what I went over with you guys at the last workshop. And in the upcoming workshop, we have a couple things to address. We can go a little more over this, but planning for RCO grants is something that I'd like to do as well. Steve Schuler had some concerns about the design of the windmill, and we really haven't talked about it as a park board. It's moving along, and it's kind of getting to a point where we're having a little more discussion on, you know, what's the city's portion of that project. what does our input need to be on there? But it's going in Windjammer Park, so I think it's probably about time to have that as a regular discussion item on the Parks Board agenda, so you guys can look at it. I'd like to get a copy of the plan so you guys can see what the design looks like. I don't know what the concern is, other than it's different from the original, I guess. I don't know. So we'll get that for you guys, probably put on the next agenda. Smith Park. So like we talked about when we went over the projects at the workshop, all those funds are going towards some improvements we're going to make with the garden club and for their centennial. And then we just painted the pavilion, and we have all the supplies to do the fences. So that's coming up next. Here, Tally's working on getting that scheduled. We'll also talk a little more about Harbor Heights at the next agenda, as well as a little bit about opportunities. We have 7th Street improvement coming up, and we have funding earmarked for trail planning around that. We have some funding here for Windjammer Park that we could possibly use for trail improvements around Fred Marsh. And then we have Harbor Heights funding that's sitting, like Blaine said, that's kind of on hold. So what do we do with all this funding for the sports fields? So we'll talk about that a little bit, and the proposal Eric has. We'll do a little presentation for you guys. Let's see, and then Mikkel left, but do you know when she's bringing the changes to the powers and duties for all the commissions back to council? That's like the name change in the revisions that the
You guys,
board
you and I
submitted.
can plot that out.
Okay. I don't know if we had a tentative date for that yet.
We can plot out.
That's all I have. Any future agenda items?
Can we get on one piece of paper? This goes back to the workshops. Everything that was on the boards.
Oh, yeah. So
So you can put them on the format that you initially showed me.
yeah, the spreadsheet here. Yeah, I will
Yeah,
send that out.
spreadsheet.
And I think we determined that it was okay to just do it as a shared sheet. So yeah, Mikkel's going to research and talk with our attorney before we send it out to you guys.
And can you also send out the programming list that you and Liz came up with?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I got that up here as well, right here. So along with this, that's kind of a just recreation program offerings, has the age groups, the schedule, program info. And then we also have, and this is what will go into David Goldman's presentation. This is just the program fees and revenue projections for each one of those. We can link that over for you guys as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Did any board members have any comments?
We can go back to the initial arts suggestion on where to put these pieces. But you were right. I have no idea what he's talking about. I mean, to be able to see what he's talking about, and how large it is, I need to know that before I could ever say, let's put it there.
Well, on your field trip, it's in the back of the yard, I'm pretty sure still now, or I can go out and get measurements for you, or,
It's back at Public Works.
yeah, I thought it was
Okay.
the top.
I think that'd be
You can stop
incredibly
by and see it.
valuable.
I could bring it down and set it up in the back of our yard like I did the other one, so you can, because it's different when they're laying on the ground, when you see it set up and it's spread out, you realize what kind of footprint it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the picture of the setup, but you can't.
Yeah, you don't feel it, do you?
Yeah, you can't visualize the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
Can we just get that and put that up next time we have a workshop?
Work on it.
Last time, we just took 2 ecology blocks, set it up, put a strap over it, so the wind wouldn't blow it around or knock it down, and it gave you a good feel to walk through it and to see what he's talking about on its features.
Sounds like we might have a pretty robust field trip.
Well, we can just do
Get your
that.
permission slips and sack lunch ready, Tom. We're going.
We can do some of that as part of the workshop, and just right
Tom,
on
I
there
already
inside
went.
the logistical shops.
We got a vehicle on order, right?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
all ride in the bus once it's here. On these little trips, that'll be fun.
I'm not worried about the time issue.
So I just had one other board comment that I brought up at the end of our workshop. So a couple weeks ago at Fort Nugent, we had an older citizen that was there to watch some soccer games that collapsed, and we had to call 911 and bring paramedics in. But the biggest thing is that we don't have an AED that's out there that's accessible to all of the different leagues. And I would just like maybe the entire board to make a recommendation to the Parks Department that the city invests in an AED that can be outside of the snack shack that's locked in one of the lock boxes. And then each of the different leagues that are out there using Fort Nugent would have a key to access it.
Yeah, that's the tricky part of that out there is if you leave anything outside that's not locked up.
Right, so that way it would be within one of those locked boxes that Sandra was saying you
And I
guys have out
believe
there.
that one belongs to football right now that's
The
out there.
snack shack,
One that's in the snack shack.
right, so nobody else but football has access to that, and that's the problem.
This is for what?
Might be the
For
simplest.
an AED, for when we have issues, because
Yeah, they're-
especially,
But people need training.
Yeah,
right, so whoever would have access to it would have training, and we could get free training through the fire department. And that would be something that I
yeah,
personally feel would be really beneficial, especially with summer getting started, and it's no longer just gonna be weekends that clubs are out on Fort Nugent, it's 7 days a week. that they're
I'll
out
have to
there.
check with the leagues. All the coaches should have CPR.
They have
That's gonna be
CPR
different
training,
There's a
but
separate training for
AED is
AEDs.
totally separate and it's not required.
and the reason we kept that as the leagues before is because we are not responsible for upkeep on it. So whether that one's even good or not, I couldn't tell you. Now, that's something we could discuss in different park places. Do we want to put those in the future? But keep in mind, there is an annual check and maintenance and disposal of new batteries have to go into them. They're not maintenance free.
Right. But I think it's a high priority for the
We
number
do
of
have
people
some
that are out there.
unused ARPA funds for like PPEs that we might be able to direct towards, safety equipment like that.
I feel like we should make a proposal though, for any place that's activated by any spectator stuff, that we actually have AEDs available. It's a good look. It makes good sense. I mean, what's the price of saving a life? I think we can justify the cost just on the value of humanity. I think it's worth having, and yeah, we'll have to do the training, but then we can increase the league funds to cover the expense. So let's just increase what the leagues have to pay per player in order to cover it. And it'll be, if there's no PP, ARPA funds or whatever to cover it, well, let's just increase the rate anyway, so we can make sure that they have the most current, up-to-date stuff. It's a value for them. There's gonna get some kickback, but you know what? Things cost money.
They'd be
And,
be willing to pay it.
right, and baseball, I'm sure would be willing to pay it. And
There you go, Brian, you're in the
I mean-
negotiation on that right now. You gotta
Yeah.
redo those contracts right now, they're outdated.
We have someone in our ranks too, Brian Rivers, that's really good about which ones are good and where we can store them and can't store them weather-wise and that sort of thing. And I do think it will be one of those things that we'll have to lock up and give coaches keys to and not just allow willy-nilly access
Well,
to.
and I wouldn't even think the coaches, like I would say, the event coordinator or the director of the recreational programming or competitive programming would be the person that would have it. So like when we had the emergency out there on Saturday, a couple weeks ago, the coach immediately called 911 and then immediately called me and said, hey, where's the AED? So,
Yeah, put you in a hard spot when it's locked up too.
yeah. But whoever those coaches would call would be the person that has the access to it and has the training.
The simplest thing is too, is since your coaches is just get your keys to the snack shack for now. Biggest fix.
Well, it's another question.
yes,
is
please.
If other leagues can have access to it. Because right now it's just football.
Yeah, you guys, we got a soccer tournament or where you got all those people out there. Yeah, I can see that being a big deal.
So it sounds like for a future agenda item, we need to put some something on there for some sort of safety plan that encompasses all this, so we can make a proposal to council about what should be done for the safety of all of our, programmed league type events for these types of things.
Yeah, and that goes a little bit, I guess, into, we have a department safety committee that's already working on emergency action plans for each of our facilities. And park system is included with that, so we can.
Well, maybe our subcommittee that's working on like rules and policies can also kind of tie into that.
Yeah, you
making
guys
a
do have
policy that we
safe-
have
Yeah, you have
these
safety.
kinds of safety devices available. So,
Like on the AEDs, if someone uses one out there, I think it should say right on it that, hey, you have to contact park staff to let them know that you used it so that they can be rechecked out. Otherwise, I can see the
All
thing
that.
getting stuff back in the box
right.
and the log turned. and-
right, we just need to build a policy for it and then build a proposal for the scope of it and have an idea of cost and all that, so we can present that recommendation to city council, because I can't imagine that people wouldn't want to do that.
Okay, we'll put that on the list. One thing I forgot to mention, so the Arts Commission is working on a busker program for Windjammer Park for, local artists and performances and different things like that. So they have a draft policy and permit application. So we're working on that. I think once we get it a little more finalized draft, we'll bring it back to you guys for your thoughts and approval on that as well. But just to mention it, get it on your radar, that's something that they're working on.
Great.
Anything else? Great, then we're gonna adjourn the meeting at 12:01 PM.